Hello and welcome to another episode of my Quest System series. In today's video we are going to do two things. First off, we will create an actor that handles respawning our enemies once they have died, and afterwards we will start to work on our prestige system. So let's get started. First off, we will go to our blueprints folder, open up the structures, and here we will add a new structure called s_enemy respawn. Open that up, and for every enemy that should be respawned, we want to keep track of the time for it to respawn. For example, after 5 seconds the enemy will reappear, so make that a float. And then we will need the actual enemy class to spawn, so just call that enemy and make it a master enemy class. Afterwards, save and close our structure. We will now go to our actors folder, right click and create a new blueprint class. Parent class can be actor. Just call that respawn actor and open that up. Here in the viewport we will just add a sphere collision. Let's call that respawn radius. Drag it on top of the default scene root so it becomes the new one, and we will leave it like that. That sphere will just define in which radius the enemies will respawn, so we'll place that in the level later. Let's head over to the graph and let's add some variables here. First one will be the respawn list. It will be of the type enemy respawn, and it will also be an array. Then we will need another one called respawn timer. That will just be a timer handle and not an array. And finally we will need the indices to spawn, which will just be an integer array. Then we will also add a custom event here that we will call respawn enemy. Give that an input, which will just be the respawn info, and make that a enemy respawn type. We will add the functionality for that later. So compile, save, drag it aside, and we will go to our characters and open up the master enemy. First off, since our enemy respawner will spawn enemy classes, there is one setting that you'll have to modify if you want that to work. So select your master enemy here, scroll down, and here auto possess AI is currently set to place in the world. So if we were to spawn a new enemy, it would be spawned without a controller and therefore it would be unable to move. To change that, you will just select the drop down here and we will choose placed in world or spawned. Alright, then we will also add a variable here, which is the respawn time. Make that a float, and we will put that in our children defaults. Let's also compile, and we will set the default to, let's say, 5 seconds. Should be fine. Then there is one variable left, and that will be the respawn actor. We will make that a respawn actor reference, editable and exposed on spawn, and we don't have to put that in the category. Pass save. Then we also have to tell our respawn actor to do something when we die. So let's go to our on death event here, and right before we destroy actor, we will drag in the respawn actor and call respawn enemy. Then we will have to worry about the respawn info, so right click, split that. The respawn info time will directly come from our variable that we just created, and the respawn info enemy will be get class, and the object will be self. Connect that, compile, save, close the master enemy. Let's also put our respawn actor into the level already, so don't forget to do that. Under actors, drag in the BP respawn actor. Then you can select the respawn radius here and increase the sphere radius. Something like that. Move it over a bit. And afterwards select our first spider. Then we've got the respawn actor here. Click that and select the respawn actor. Do the same thing for our second enemy. Alright, so we've got that linked up. Now we'll add the functionality for our respawn actor. And it will get a little bit complicated because we have to worry about the case that we kill two enemies at the same time. And so we cannot just add a delay here and then spawn the actor. That would not work. Instead, what we will do here is drag in the respawn list and add to it. Then connect the respawn info from our event. Afterwards, we will get our respawn timer and check for is valid. Add a branch. If our timer is already valid, so if it's true, we don't have to do anything. But if not, we will set timer by event. Time will be, let's say, 0.5 seconds, and we'll check looping. Then we will promote the return value of that to our respawn timer. Now we have to specify which event should be fired in an interval of 0.5 seconds. So we'll add another custom event, which we will call respawn tick. Get the little handle here, the event delegate, and connect it to the event. And for our respawn tick, we will drag in the respawn list and run it for each loop. Let's actually split the array element here, so we get the time and enemy, or you can break that, whatever you want. We will check whether the time minus 0.5, which is the amount of time that has passed since the last respawn tick was called, and make sure to spell that correctly. Let's check whether the time minus 0.5 is greater than 0. Add a branch. If it's not, that means that we will have to spawn the enemy now, and so we will drag in our indices to spawn, add an element to that, and connect the array index. But if it's true, meaning it's greater than 0, we will just drag in our respawn list and set array element. Index will come from our array index, split the item. Enemy class comes from our enemy class of the for each loop, and the time will be time minus 0.5. Connect that. And that's it for the first loop. After we did that, we will drag in the indices to spawn and run for each loop here. What we will do here is spawn actor from class. Link that to the loop body, and we'll have to find out our class now. To do that, drag in the respawn list, get from that, add the array element of our for each loop, not the array index. Then break it and connect the enemy to the class. After you did that, the respawn actor pin will appear, and we will just get a reference to self. Collision handling override will be try to adjust location but always spawn. And let's split the spawn transform here. Rotation and scale will be left to the default, but we want to get a random location in our sphere, so drag in the respawn radius, get sphere radius, and then we will add a node called get random reachable point in radius. The radius will be a sphere radius, and the origin will be get actor location of ourselves. Plug that in for the location, and now we spawn the enemy. Afterwards, we want to drag in our respawn list and remove index. Index will be our array element again. And afterwards we will run a for loop. The first index being the array element, and the last index will basically be the last index of our indices to spawn array. Just means that we will cycle through all indices after the one we are currently dealing with. And what we'll do is copy over our indices to spawn, set array element, index comes from a loop. For the item we'll have to get from our indices to spawn, add the index and subtract 1. Okay, now we can go back, and after we completed our second for each loop, we will clear the indices to spawn, because we've handled all of them now. And then we'll drag in our respawn list and check whether the length of that is greater than 0. So does our list still contain elements? If true, we won't do anything, but if false, we can drag in our respawn timer and clear and invalidate timer by handle. So we stop our timer when there's no element left in our respawn list. Compile, save that. Okay, now we've got all of that set up. Let's see if our system is actually working. So I'll hit play. I will walk to our 2 enemies here and kill both of them at the same time. Now we will wait until they're deleted and wait 5 seconds. And you will see that 2 new enemies were spawned. If I kill those again, maybe with a slight delay now. First one is spawned, and then after the delay, the next one. So our respawner is basically working. Let's continue with our prestige system now. First off, we will go to our blueprints, structures, again add a new structure called s_region prestige. Open that up. It will have 2 variables in here. First is the region, which will be an e_region, and then the next one is the actual prestige for that region, which will just be an integer. Okay, save that. We also want to have a way of displaying our current region and prestige, so we'll go to our widgets, main widget, search for a border here and drag that on top of a canvas. Let's call that the region border. Make that a variable, anchor it to the top center here, set the position in x and y to 0, alignment in x to 0.5. We will check size to content, set the padding to 0, and the brush we will make black with an alpha of 0.75. Afterwards we will add a horizontal box to our region border, and there we will start with the text. We can just call that region text, make that a variable. Default text can be something like Kanto or whatever your regions are called. Let's give it a padding of, let's say, 10 pixels to the left side here. And we'll increase the font size to 27. Afterwards we will add a spacer to a horizontal box and set the size in X to like 40, just so that there is a bit of space in between the region and the actual prestige. Then we will add an image. You can uncheck the as variable, and the image here will be our PP icon that we already used in our journal. So got that. And finally we will add one last text, which will be the prestige text. Make that a variable. We will give it a padding of 10 to the right and also 2 to the top, so it's on the same level as our PP icon here. Set the default to 350 or whatever, and we'll give it a color that will be similar to our icon's color, so something like a dark greenish color. Set the font type to bold italic, and we will also give it an opaque shadow color. Compile, save, close the main widget. Then we will go to our characters, third person character, and add some variables here. First one will be prestige points. It will be of the type s_region prestige, and it will be an array. And the next variable will be the current region, which will not be an array, and it will be an e_regions. Compile, save, set the default to Canto or whatever you want, and we will need some functions. So we will leave our prestige points array empty and generate it. So for all of the regions that are set up in our e_regions enumeration, we will add an element to our prestige points. To do that, we'll just add a function called setup prestige points. What we'll do here is right click and search for e_regions for each e_regions, and you'll get a for each loop for all of the entries basically. Drag in our prestige points and we'll add to that. Split the struct pin here. The region will come from our enum value and the prestige will just be 0. So we'll start with a prestige of 0 in every region, obviously. After it's completed, return. The next function will be called get prestige by region. It will be a pure function with one input called region, and that will be an e_regions, and one output of the type integer called prestige. Simply what we have to do, drag in our prestige points, get from that. For the index, we'll drag off our region and convert that to an integer, to int and in brackets byte. Then break it and connect the prestige to the return node. Next function will be called update region widget. Simply what we will do here is drag in our main widget, get the region name or region text, set text to our current region that we will have to convert to a string first, enum to string, not byte to string. Then drag that in for the text. Afterwards we will also get our prestige text, set text, and to find out our current prestige, we'll drag in get prestige by region, connect our current region, and convert the prestige to a text. Uncheck the use grouping unless you want to have that, and afterwards return. And one last function that we'll need is called set prestige by region, which will have two inputs. The first one will be e_regions again, called region. And the next one will be an integer called value. What we'll do here is get our prestige points, this time set array element. The index will be our region that we'll have to convert to an integer first. Then split the item, connect our in region, and the value will become our prestige. Connect that here. Afterwards we will check whether the in region equal enum our current region. Add a branch. If that is the case, we will call update region widget and then return. And if it's not, we will directly return. Compile, save. We can close our functions now. And we need to worry about calling them. So in our event graph, we'll go to event begin play. And before anything happens here, before we actually spawn the quest manager, we will set up our prestige points. Then we'll create the main widget, and directly before we add it to the viewport, we also want to call update region widget. Okay, if we play now, we'll just see our current region with 0 prestige. So let's add some debugging tools to increase that. Actually, just let us go to the G input first, which is another debugging thing that we don't need anymore because we have ways of adding quests already. And also we will go to the H key that's used to complete subgoals. We don't want that anymore since we already implemented our templates. Okay, now we can go somewhere up here, search for P for prestige. And what we'll do is set prestige by region, drag in the current region, and the value will be get prestige by region of our current region plus, let's just say 50, connect it to the value and connect it to the pressed. Add a comment box P to add prestige to current region. Then we'll add a custom event here, which is called on region, or better on new region entered. We'll have an input of the type eRegions called new region. What we'll do here is check whether the new region does not equal our current region. Otherwise it's not a new one, so we don't have to do anything. Connect that to a branch and a branch to the execution. If it's true, set the current region to the in region, and afterwards update the region widget. Select all of this, add a comment box on new region entered, and we will add another key, for example R, which will just be used to change a region. Just for debugging purposes, we'll set up a system for that in another episode. So for now, just go into a flip-flop. If it's A, we will call on enter on new region entered, and we will enter Yoto. Copy paste that. If we press R a second time, we will enter Kanto again. Select all of this, add a comment box R to enter new region. That over, and let's see whether that's working. So we've got Kanto, let's hit P, see that was increased, you can see it updating. If we hit R now, we basically entered Yoto, and we can see that we have no prestige there currently. If we press P, that will change, and we can hit R again, go back to Kanto, and see that our prestige was saved there. Alright, that's it for our basic region and prestige system and for our respawn actor. See you in the next one.